Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, July 22nd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Ball State game in 45 days, the game against Michigan in 129 days. Our friends at Jeff Ruby's Columbus are proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus or scan that convenient QR code on your screen to check out the menu and make a reservation today. All right, on the menu for today's show, we got to talk about Gabriel Georges, five-star running back who will be announcing his college decision on Wednesday. We are going to make our final call on where he is going to be. I'm going to welcome in Juck Miletti, the recruiting insider for BuckeyeInsiders.com. Juck, this is a recruitment that Ohio State has been chasing very, very hard for as long as they possibly can. And now we're finally coming to the end of that process. He's announcing on Wednesday. My sense is Ohio State is not going to get the answer that they were hoping for.
I feel the same sentiment, Tom, and it's one of those things, in my opinion, that was kind of a miscalculation on Ohio State's part, where they looked at last cycle with the top backs of the class in Savion Hyder, Derek Cooper, roughly getting about $800,000 deals. And they said to themselves, are we going to stop recruiting these guys and go all in for Gabriel Georges next year, knowing full well probably going to cost us over $1 million for a running back? They thought long and hard about it, and they said, I think it's worth it. And that's what they decided to do. Now, the miscalculation that I believe happened was they thought that it would be over $1 million, and it turns out the guy they were going up against wasn't bidding against Ohio State. Tennessee was bidding against Tennessee's future, and it certainly seems like from the time Gabriel Georges left his Ohio State official visit and went to his Tennessee official visit, Tennessee didn't care what Ohio State had on the table. They immediately doubled it. It was right then that day. They came with a $2 million offer, and ever since then, more perks and benefits have been leaking from that offer. And that's the kind of stuff that Ohio State doesn't get in the muck with. Now, you can look at this and say Ohio State knew that's how Tennessee was going to play this because they just did this with David Sanders. They already knew ahead of time. So why get involved in a head-to-head with these guys if you know that's the way they're going to operate? You can't cry about it later and say, well, they are offering private jets. We know this is how they operate. And some people are going to be bitter about that and say Ohio State had some egg on their face at the end of this, but they took a swing. And the big picture is this class has the best offensive and defensive line class combination we've seen in the modern recruiting era. And I don't think anybody would trade this Ohio State class for the Tennessee class with Gabriel Georges, which has 7 4-stars and 10 3-stars. I certainly wouldn't.
Yeah, I looked at the recruiting rankings, and this is before Gabriel Georges commits, but Tennessee right now is right behind Minnesota in the class rankings. And Minnesota has a lot more players committed, but in terms of average star rating, Tennessee is kind of behind South Carolina right now and around Missouri right now. So, this is a team where, and the Tennessee people watching this are going to say, oh, this is sour grapes. But if you're Ohio State, you'd much rather have Gabriel Georges at Tennessee than somewhere like Georgia or somewhere like Notre Dame or somewhere like that. Just this is Tennessee trying to get over the hump, and they haven't gotten over the hump yet. And I think Tennessee thought they were going to get over the hump 2 years ago, and very much did not in Columbus, Ohio, in December of 2024. So is this the thing that makes the difference and finally gets them over the hump and turns them into a legitimate national championship contender? We'll see. The next question is, okay, assuming he does go to Tennessee, what next for Ohio State? Because they took Favor Aki last year. They took Legend Bay last year. And, so you brought in a couple guys last year, not top of the board, 30 carry a game kind of guys necessarily, but you brought in a couple guys last year. Now this year, it's getting a little early for Ohio State in the running back chase this year. Who are other people that they may sort of turn their attention to this cycle, or do they just kind of turn the page and look at 2028 and go, well, we got our guy there, and start the conversation with that?
Certainly do got your guy in 2028, and Elijah Newman Hall, who I think is just about as sure of a thing as you can have for a guy committed that far out. which is great news. What I can say I don't think is going to happen, and I know this would make a lot of Ohio State fans happy, is if they went all in now on trying to flip a Kamon Spell who committed to Georgia, or get back in on a Landon Williams-Callis who is right now between Texas and Texas A&M. Kamon Spell got an $800,000 offer that he committed to with Georgia. Landon Williams-Callis will get roughly the same, and some will say, well, if they had this much for David Gabriel George, you can turn it into that. I don't think Ohio State's philosophy on spending on running backs has changed. This was a David Gabriel George specific thing. So very unlikely to see them do that there. And when we look at guys that they were also kind of in on, they had 2 official visits scheduled. One of them showed up. That was Jaden Miles. And Ohio State kind of turned a cold shoulder on him, and it seemed like he made a real hasty decision to commit to Florida State the very next day. What are the odds of getting back in on that? I think they'll try. Personally, I am much more interested in them trying to get back in on Nigel Newkirk, who was scheduled to also come on an official visit, the only other running back. But he visited Alabama the week before, and Alabama locked him down. He shut his recruitment down. Now he's the 24th ranked running back in the class. I strongly disagree. Alabama does too. They paid him like a top 10 back at roughly $400,000. Now, when you look at that, that's still a ton of money for a running back who's ranked the 23rd running back. And this brings us back to the conversation we've had for a couple years now of, well, now you're talking about bringing in a guy as a 180-pound freshman making more money than the backs in your class right now that are on campus, and that doesn't work. So where do you go? Trenard Roberts' name has come up. Trenard Roberts is a 3-star out of Florida that's pretty interesting. He's a guy who at one point was the number 1, number 2 back in the state of Florida at IMG as a sophomore, looked really good, and then transferred for his junior year to his local school and kind of dropped off the face of the earth. There's no film on him. I can't find anything. I've reached out to him. I can't get a hold of him. But currently, it looks like the most motion with his recruitment is with North Carolina. But he's been a name that's been surfacing. I think it's really interesting. It could be one of those, he slid kind of under the media radar. And if Ohio State could potentially get in on that, that could be something interesting. There are some other names of guys that they've been involved with throughout the process that would really interest me. Elijah Kimball out of New York, kind of a smaller home run hitter, but he recently committed to Syracuse, and that's a guy that Carlos Locklyn had a relationship with that I would love to see him double back on. Caden Way out of Georgia, another guy roughly now that is a 3-star, number 30 back in the country, currently uncommitted. So there's another one that Ohio State had a relationship with that we could potentially see them double back on. And there, of course, are those first 3 weeks of high school evaluation. They're going to evaluate everybody's film after those first 3 weeks. And what are the odds that they find somebody in that period versus somebody that they've already offered? And again, they did their due diligence, Tom. They offered 23 other running backs aside from David Gabriel George. It's not that they were all David Gabriel George and that's it. There are relationships built. Who do we see them double back on? That it's too early to tell. But those are a couple names that stand out to me.
I'm sure the Ohio State fan base listening to this is probably in a worst case scenario kind of mood. Like, let's talk about, okay, what's the worst thing that happens here if they don't get David Gabriel George and they don't get another running back who's, even kind of in that conversation of being someone who could come in and be an immediate impact player, a year 1 or even year 2 clear running back 1 kind of starter. I think it's worth sort of resetting the table here with who do they have on the roster right now? How much longer are those guys around? Because you had like a Bo Jackson last year, who it feels like Bo Jackson's been at Ohio State quite a while. Bo Jackson still has 2 more years this year and next year before he can declare for the NFL draft. So unless he goes somewhere else, they've got Bo Jackson for 2026, Bo Jackson for 2027. Same thing for Isaiah West. Legend Bay just showed up as a true freshman. You got 3 years of him. I think that, the natural inclination is to immediately press the panic button and they are doomed at running back. But with the guys they've got on the roster, I don't think that's necessarily true.
Ohio State going all in on Gabriel Georges, they were sitting in a position, in my view, that they had the luxury of doing that. And they had the luxury of doing that because, as you said last year, they brought in Favor Akey. And now, watching Legend Bay's physical transformation, he isn't thought coming in to be a 3-down back. Well, now all of a sudden he's TreVeyon Henderson's size. Who's to say that doesn't happen? We all talk about pass protection. TreVeyon Henderson, as a senior, was quite good at that. And in addition to Favor Akey in Legend Bay, you brought in 3 running backs the year prior in Bo Jackson, Isaiah West, and Turbo Rogers. And Turbo, who we've not talked about, was a top 10 back in the class, and we've yet to see anything out of him. Still 4 years of eligibility. So we're looking at 5 guys right there over the span of the last 2 years. That is much more than usual, which gave them the luxury to take this shot, which to me was an all-plus side kind of shot. Meaning, if you don't get him, it doesn't hurt your roster. The worst-case scenario isn't so bad. You wind up with a guy out of this class who's maybe a project-y type of guy, and you roll into next year with a top 5 back in Elijah Newman Hall. All's well in Lando Buckeye, in my opinion, at running back.
Yeah, so probably not the end of the world, not the decision that Ohio State fans were probably hoping to hear, but also not the end of the world for Ohio State. And we'll see what they continue to do with that 2027 running back class. And of course, as he mentioned earlier, Elijah Newman Hall already committed for 2028. We saw him this summer at some of the camps. He looks ready to play at the college level already. So it's still some bright days ahead for the Ohio State Buckeyes in that running back room, but sounds like Wednesday may be a shade of Tennessee orange instead. So there you go. There's an update on the recruitment of Gabriel Georges, what we're expecting to hear on Wednesday when he announces his decision. You want to talk to us about it more? You want to talk to us about what's next at that running back position? Best way to do that is to sign up at BuckeyeInsiders.com. That's where we got our whole team of insiders covering the Ohio State team, covering Ohio State recruiting, covering X's and O's, covering Ohio State basketball. We got another round of Ohio State basketball interviews and practice coming up on Tuesday evening. We'll have coverage on the Insiders board at BuckeyeInsiders.com. With all of that, we'll try and have Marcus Hartman, our basketball insider, on tomorrow's show to talk about that on the Buckeyes TomOrrow Morning podcast. And thanks again to our friends at Jeff Ruby's Columbus, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.